everyone. Let's see.
I believe this is your
Oh, my gavel. Oh, how'd you get over there? Okay. Let's get this set up.
I don't think
Okay.
there's so many.
I move to return from executive session.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can I get I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Okay, public forum. Individuals who wish to address the board should state their name and address for the record, make their points as clearly and concisely as possible, and limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes, which may not be shared with or yielded to others. All comments shall be directed to the Board of Township Trustees. Thank you in advance for your comments. Okay, anybody wish to address the board?
Hi.
Sure.
Is this live? Is this ready?
Yep, should
Okay.
be. Thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm Betsy Moore, 725 Cedar Crest Lane. Recently, I asked the township for copies of the applications for the 3 new park board appointments. Clearly, the trustees have a priority for the park board that does not include protecting or advocating for our parks. Multiple highly qualified applicants were passed over in favor of one individual who touted organizing ice cream socials as important selection criteria. The desperation to keep Beach Acres from being park space is obvious. It is abundantly clear that a park board that is comprised of local realtors and overseen by a commercial real estate broker is not a park board at all. It's an extension of the Economic Development Committee. It seems silly to have to point out that the function of a park board should be to position the parks for long-term success and service to the community. This can't be accomplished when economic development is positioned as a priority at the expense of our parks. Anderson Township has seen significant real estate development in recent years, including the apartment complex on 5 Mile Road and new subdivisions on Salem, Markley, and Woodruff Roads, among others. The same investment has not been made in our parks. As our township grows, it is a disservice to both existing and new residents to neglect parks at the expense of further economic development. In fact, research has shown that proximity to high-quality park and recreation facilities actually improves property values in addition to residents' quality of life. To push for development without simultaneously investing in our township's resources and amenities is to fail at both economic development and the broader goals of public service that township trustees are responsible to serve. Furthermore, the property that Anderson Park District purchased from Beach Acres Parenting Center in 2023 is protected by the deed, which reads, "The property described above," referring to 6881 Beachmont Avenue, "may be used only for park purposes. This restrictive covenant is intended by grantor and grantee to run with the land in perpetuity as to bind all successive grantees to use this restriction." How are the trustees, who are supposed to be acting on behalf of all township residents, spending so much time trying to undo this land acquisition and manage a piece of property that they do not and cannot control? Specifically, I'm referring to several versions of a proposed survey being sent back and forth between the trustees and the park district, trying to determine the best use of this property. I'd venture to say that township residents would be appalled to know the details of this scenario. To best serve the residents of Anderson Township, the trustees should stop spending time trying to manipulate the park district and return to issues that actually benefit Anderson Township residents. Anderson residents deserve much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Trustee comments. Lexi, Josh?
No, I was just looking up at, no, I don't have any comments right now. Go ahead, Josh, if you do.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I also, just so you know, Ms. Moore, listened to the comments you made at the park board meeting, so I have some of those that I'll address as well. You know, I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with us or thinking we're doing something wrong, but when you go to a park board meeting or come here and make accusations that simply aren't true, that's where I do have a problem. The insinuation that we are trying to do something manipulative at the Park District is absolutely ridiculous. And sometimes in these situations, what's good to just kind of disclose to everyone are the facts. So let's take a little history lesson. Take a little trip back in history in the Park District. When I was on the Park Board for 4 years, so I know what goes on at the Park District. I care a lot about the Park District, despite your comments. Spent a lot of time working and volunteering at the Park District. A couple years ago, Anderson Township did a comprehensive plan. You may be familiar with this. The comprehensive plan, which was done in 2022, engaged over 100 residents for a year-long process in what we want the future of Anderson Township to look like. Roundtable discussions, open houses, surveys, all of those things were conducted. And it included what we want to do or what we think we envision, the residents. We're not part of that. It's the residents that lead that committee. And Beach Acres was identified as transitional residents, the acreage that you're specifically referring to, I believe, which is the remaining acreage at Beach Acres that they purchased last year. Interestingly enough, one of the people on that committee was Ken Kushner, and I believe Julie might have even been on that. So to say that we are trying to thwart what's going on or what's going to go on at Beach Acres is not only not true. You know who thwarted the idea of what's supposed to be, at least according to the comprehensive plan, the Park District participated in is supposed to be there? Not a park. But yet the Park District took it upon themselves without talking to anyone, not collaborating with anyone, not letting anyone know, certainly not people on this board that appointed all of the park commissioners that were on that board last year that made that decision. Yes, we all appointed every single one of them, yet not one word. We've been working with the Park District forever. I'll give you a list of how many things we've done for the Park District in collaboration, and not one comment, not one word, not one thing. They literally did it behind everyone's back in executive session, secret meetings. Now, why do you think that was? Why do you think they did that? I'll tell you why. Because they would have had some resistance from this board and from a lot of people in the community. A lot of people in the community. Because that's not what it was supposed to be. Let's talk about Beach Acres when they owned the property and decided to sell it. When Beach Acres decided to sell it, they went out with a realtor, commercial real estate broker, not me, and decided to sell the property. And they made it very clear they wanted the most money for that land. So they hired an agent, and they specifically targeted a price that was likely going to solicit development on that property. Beach Acres did. They set a price point that the only entity that could buy Beach Acres or afford to buy it were developers. And they spent a year entertaining offers. We had several developers come to us and ask, here's what we're thinking about doing, which included several hundred apartments. And you know what we told them? Paul, you want to chime in on this?
Yes, say no.
We said no. No, not what we're thinking. Because according to the comprehensive plan and the land use plan, that's not what we wanted. We wanted transitional residence. How that's defined, mixed-use development, something other than big, giant apartments and something more than vacant land, vacant parkland. So what did Beach Acres do? Well, they went to the Park District. And they said, well, you know, we're not going to get the price we want, so let's go prey on the Park District. And I say that because the Park District has made it very well known that they've wanted that land for a long, long time. And instead of trying to sell it to a developer for $6.5 million or whatever the number was, they sold it to the Park District for $6.3 million. Ms. Moore, do you know what the appraised value was that the Park District commissioned for that land? Do you know what it was? It was 3.6. It was 3.6 million. It's a public record. You can ask for it. I'm sure you will. 3.6. And they paid 6.2 for it. Almost double what that property was worth. So when you talk about, and I specifically made some notes, the Park District and their mission of long-term viability, well, the Park Board last year now saddled the Park District with $500,000 a year in debt payments for land they did not need and for land they didn't know what they were going to do with, and they didn't have the money to pay for it, so they had to borrow it. Now, that's been done. Can't do anything about that. Okay. I made it very clear when we found out last year that that was going to go on, because developers said, well, I guess Anderson Township's going to buy it. It wasn't us, it was the Park District. Yes, I talked to the Park Board and I said, I do not agree with this. But they did it. And then on top of that, they then went out with a capital levy last year. A capital levy for playgrounds and pickleball and potties. It was a nice campaign. But it was for things that could have been raised privately. It was for things that we could have helped collaborate with. But they went out for a capital levy for wants, not for needs, which is what the Beach Acres purchase was. And while you're shaking your head at me, and clearly you have an agenda behind this, this is why you're here and why you showed up at the Park Board meeting, instead of just having a conversation with us. So this is why I'm telling you what's been going on. I did not agree with the capital levy. I don't think anybody on this dais agreed with that capital levy in the way that it was done. Because it saddled the people in this township who were already strapped tax-wise, and you can see what happened at the park levy this year, not passing, that people were kind of tired of it. And the capital levy, to come up with things that could have been raised privately through sponsorships, was not a smart idea, and none of us agreed with it. On top of buying land that was spending twice as much as what the land was worth. And again, you're shaking your head, but you think that we don't care about the Park District. Well, let me tell you how much we care about the Park District. When Beach Acres decided to sell the rec center, we stepped up and bought it. Not only did we buy it, we spent $2.5 million, $3 million renovating it. And if you've been in it lately, it's pretty awesome. Because we saw it as a community asset. And here's the best part about it. We did it because Beach Acres also sold part of their land to a senior living facility, and we were able to use tax increment financing dollars off of the incremental value of that senior living to pay for the whole thing. Didn't have to ask the taxpayers for anything. It was awesome. The school district also participated in it to the tune of like $1 million. We saved the recplex and made it something special. We could have done the same thing, probably at a much less price, with the remaining land. But what they did and what they spent that money on that land was not needed. We have five times the amount of green space and open space and park space in Anderson Township, per the National Park and Recreation's recommended average for a community of our size. 5 times. I know, it's great. It's great.
Not let 1 acre of it slip away.
And we won't. We can't. It's protected. And just like this land is now parkland, it is. There's nothing, we cannot take that away. So your insinuation that we're going to do it and take it away is a lie. It's wrong. You shouldn't be spreading things like that because it's not true. But do I think that there needs to be something on that parkland now, that most valuable piece of property in Anderson Township, than a dog park? Yes, I do. And they were starting to put a dog park on the most expensive property on Beachmont Avenue. When they have 500 acres, you could have put a dog park somewhere else. This is a chance to do something special, and that leads me to where we are today with this survey, this ridiculous survey that you brought up. Do you know why we're trying to do a survey? We want the people of Anderson Township who paid for this property and who own this property to have a say in what goes on there, not the park district, not this board of trustees. Now that the public owns it, we want the public to have input. That's what's been going on the last few months. And if you've pulled records requests or listened to any of the meetings at the park district, the one reason why we can't seem to get there is because Ken Kushner and one of their board members want to include something in the survey, the study, I should say, because it's more comprehensive than just one survey, that pigeonholes that property into some recreation center. A recreation center that we have no idea how we would pay for, a recreation center that we don't even know if we need in this community. Mrs. Moore, I clearly understand that you care about the park district, and believe it or not, I do too. And just because you think I'm a commercial real estate broker and I'm sticking people on that board because we're some agenda, that's not true. Jeff Rosa and Amy Brokammer were put on that board because they've been volunteering for 10 years. 10. Amy does more than ice cream socials. She has literally volunteered hundreds of hours for this township, including both of them on that comprehensive planning committee. So to say that she's just someone that throws ice cream socials, it's mean. It's not right. You should meet her. You should talk to her. Go have coffee with her. Get to know her. Get to know Jeff. Get to know me. I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to you. But when you show up at public meetings and you throw insinuations that aren't true, that's when I have a problem. Because a lot of people in this room sitting at that table and this dais have spent a lot of time, I mean thousands of hours, working with that park district because we know how important it is. So with all due respect, while I appreciate your comments were off base. And I'd be happy to talk to you further about it at some point.
Lexi, any comments?
Well, just a comment about, I did try to take some notes on everything that you said. And just coming from, I will address the interview process for the commissioners. Those were extensive interviews. We approached I'll speak for myself, and approaching those, the goal is for someone to take the picture of the township as a whole, but also remembering that while the park, the township, and sometimes it comes up the school district, we're all separate entities. But our goal largely is the same with different avenues of improving the quality of life of the township. When I sat there and interviewed candidates, I asked them questions to see if they would be able to do that job using the tools they have, which is the community's feedback. The park district is a part of this community, but it's owned by you, by me, by the taxpayers. And so those community members came together and had a process for deciding what they want across the community. And I asked those individuals that interviewed for that role, will you be taking your personal opinions and personal goals and passion projects to this role? Or do you plan on looking at the community's feedback as a whole and implementing something, whatever it is, responsible based on that feedback as a whole? Being a responsible steward of the parks. That is the energy that I came from and who I selected, because I do care. I also care that it is separate, and despite that, there has been extensive collaboration. And so while you were speaking, I was looking, because I have a list of some of the things that partnerships that have, and really us giving to the parks over the last decades. and I think I'll show it if you're still here after the meeting, I can go into it. But this is not some hatred for the park districts or the, and looking at the interview process, it was an extensive interview for that purpose. And I can speak to myself, but I think with confidence I can speak to the board, that there was no hidden or other ulterior motive or agenda. And the candidates that were selected, I both felt with their experience here in this township from what I knew of them, volunteering with them and working with them, that they would be responsible stewards and would make intelligent, good decisions that would benefit the community as a whole. So I know it's difficult to come up here and speak to us as a board about something that is very important to you, and so I thank you for your comments. We are not just available here. I would be happy to give you my contact information so that you don't have to wait for a meeting to speak with us. We are available and we do take your calls. And that's pretty much all that I have, Dee. It's just that the spirit that which we came behind the interview process was just that, to interview the perfect fit. And I do feel that the candidates we picked really were the right candidates for the job.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think everything's been said on this issue. I don't really have much to add. I did go to one of the park board meetings, I will say this, when the survey was first being discussed back in, I don't know, it seems like it was a long time ago now. I expressed an interest in wanting a survey because after the purchase of that property, immediately there was an email or magazine or something that came out and said they were going to put a dog park and a this and that. And to me, I use that park practically every day. I use that park a lot. And it's like, to me, after you spend that much money on a piece of property, as Josh said, it's taxpayer owned. It's like, I wanted, as a resident, I wanted input on what should go on that. That's why I do think, I agree with the idea of a survey. And my point to the park district in that meeting, and I will say it again today, is, to me, don't spend a dime on that land. Clear it. I was agreeing, yes, you gotta clear all the little cottages, and that's all been done. I understood that that money had to be spent, but before you start spending money building things, don't build anything. Decide what you're gonna do with it first. But just to throw things on there willy-nilly, which is what it looked like to me, we're gonna put this on, we're gonna put a basketball court, it's like, do we need a basketball court? I mean, and a lot of that was being based on a survey that was done in 2014. That's 10 years ago. 2014. And I will, at the time, I remember that survey, and I remember that survey not being a very good survey. And then the survey—
700 people responded
right,
to that survey.
it wasn't a
total
good
is
survey
700.
at the time, and you're basing your decisions on something that was done in 2014, 10 years ago. The needs in this community have changed in the last 10 years. That's why, and I went to the board meeting personally as a resident, not as a trustee, and expressed my views on that. So, and then, I don't know, that's all I want to say about that. I think the survey should go ahead. I don't know why it seems like it's getting bogged down, but I would hope that the survey goes out and let the community say what they want on there. You know, if everybody says, okay, we want a recplex or whatever, again, but as part of that question, how do you want to pay for that? Because you build something big like that, there's a cost. There's a cost to run it. There's a cost to, and that's on all of us as taxpayers. That's why I think that the community should decide.
At the end of the day, what it comes down to is engaging the community. And so I will say, we're not just saying something that we don't practice. You mentioned the 5 Mile apartments. We spent, how much time did we spend going through a public procurement process with not only inviting people to give us ideas, but engaging the community for that process? How long was that process? Okay.
Well, it was extensive, and this is the last comment I will make. I will never say no to soliciting more information from the community about any big decision. And in my tenure as trustee and as a resident volunteering, that is what I've seen. We will not ever make a decision in a vacuum about anything that has a big ripple or impact in the community, and we are just, with our limited oversight, are looking for the same and are never going to turn down an opportunity to engage the community before moving the needle on something like that.
And the other thing, we are elected. The park commission is appointed by us. We appointed everybody last year, the people that, I guess you liked them last year when they spent the money to do that and did the capital. We put all those people on there. And it's a reflection of us, what they do. And I put Julie on that board. And the only thing I've asked, and we don't have any oversight, the only thing I expect is that communicate with us. Tell us what's going on. And that did not happen last year, Mrs. Moore, which is why 2 of them are not on there. That's why.
The only remaining thing I want to say is you will talk quite a bit about a dog park and a dog park. And I'm sure that you're well aware that the Park District put out information, including a short range, a mid-range, and a long-range plan for that property. There are 3 different scenarios, 3 different, all different timeframes, what they can do now, what they, and then what they ultimately plan to do. So to talk about just a dog park is again to do disservice to the park district.
Again, Mrs. Moore, I know, and just so,
This isn't a back and forth.
this isn't a back and forth, but I want to make sure people in the audience, and because it's recorded, can hear it. You said the park did put out a short-term, mid-term, long-term plan for that land. And that's true, they did. Did they ask anybody? Did they engage anyone? Did they do their own internal surveys? Did they talk to the people that, that's the problem we had with it. Is that, how do we know that's what the people want? And again, it'd be one thing if it was a small 2-acre piece of property in one of their parks. This was 17 acres that they paid $6.2 million for. That's where the problem was. That was where the quote-unquote issue was.
Okay. I think we've talked this one to death. We're going to end that discussion. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I will thank you for the picture, whoever idea that was. Okay, moving on. Let's see, Brian.
All right, you have the October financials, and you'll notice that the general fund balance stayed pretty much the same, but overall there was a decrease in funds. We sent the school's TIF funds to them, so that's reflected in these. I was at the school board meeting last night, and in the treasurer's report, she mentioned how October was a big revenue month for them. Forget it.
Fat month.
From getting our TIF
Yes.
TIF funds, and she was advising the board that that wouldn't happen in the next few months. That the fund balances would start to go back down. So similar to us, September was big and October come down. Same for November. For the revenue, the general fund is 98% collected. So we basically collected what we think we're going to collect. All funds is 97.5% collected. We don't have any appropriation changes for then and nows, but we do have some minutes.
Thank you. I move to adopt the meeting minutes as presented by the fiscal officer from August 15th, 2024 and September 19th, 2024.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Garth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
I move to adopt the meeting minutes from October 3rd, 2024 as presented by the fiscal officer.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Garth?
Abstain due to absence.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
And then we have the real estate assessment refund at 4C. So we received $480,000 from the county auditor's real estate assessment fund. State law requires that every tax levy have a percentage fee that goes to the county auditor's real estate assessment fund that allows them to do their real estate work and their property appraisal services. So the auditor does a full reappraisal every 6 years, and if there's a surplus, the auditor may return the funds to the taxing authority. So this year, the auditor has returned $20 million to the taxing authorities. Our pro rata share of that is $480,000. The school district received $637. The park district received $29,000. So that's just for your information. And then 4D is a contract that I'm recommending we adopt. So it's with Bonefish Systems, and it's an accounts payable monitoring system. It will analyze all the payments that we have. So we will run our payments through this system, and it's going to check for fraud or errors. It will verify bidding requirements. If there's something that would have needed to be bid, it will check against that. It also checks against the Secretary of State and the Auditor of State and any U.S. list of debarred vendors. So it'll tell us if we shouldn't be paying a vendor. And they're used by more than 350 school districts currently and some cities, but I understand we will be the first township to use this system.
I move to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement with Bonefish Systems LLC and related tri-party agreement with Bonefish Systems LLC and Fifth Third Bank relating to accounting payable monitoring.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Okay, Margaret, anything?
No,
Nothing? Nothing for finance, fire and rescue. Rick?
Good evening. The only thing the fire department has this evening is request authorization to sell some obsolete equipment via the internet auction of GovDeals. Again, we have no cost involved in those sales. The successful buyer pays a premium and we receive the highest bid from the bidder. And this is all the equipment that has run its useful life, basically is outdated, and it would be either thrown away or sold, so we're selling it. And I would note that we started working on GovDeals. We started selling about a year ago, and we have so far collected over $39,500 in selling items that we just don't have any use for, that are outdated in the fire service. So the resolution before you tonight seeking permission to sell these items on the list.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Really appreciate you for doing that. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the sale of surplus equipment pursuant to Section 505.10 of the revised code, providing for sale of personal property via internet auction.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
That's all for the fire department tonight. Thank you.
Okay, planning and zoning. Paul?
Hi, good evening. In your packets, there is a proposal from the Kleinger's Company for a project at 5 Mile and 275. Staff has been working with the Kleinger's Company on improvements, roadway improvements at this intersection since June of 2023. We had requested the Kleinger's Company to come up with different alternatives to improve the traffic flow in that particular intersection. These have been presented to ODOT, and we have come up with a preferred alternative. So the proposal in front of you, including the proposed transportation improvements, also allows for the opportunity to revamp the landscaping and gateway identification signage down at the area. So the proposal in front of you is to continue moving this project forward, contracting with the Kleinger's Company for civil and transportation engineering, landscape architecture, and survey services for the 5 Mile and 275 improvement project.
I move to authorize the township administrator to enter into a contract with the Kleinger's Group following review by the law director for civil engineering, transportation engineering, landscape architecture, and surveying services for the 5 Mile Road and I-275 interchange improvement project in an amount not to exceed $448,300, I think, as well as a 10% contingency of $44,830 using 1994 TIF funds allocated for the improvements of the 5 Mile or Beachmont area.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Sheriff, nothing. Public Works, nothing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Magna will cover the first couple of items, and then Mr. Severs will pick up, and I'll finalize the agenda.
Good evening. Good evening. The first item I have for your consideration is a resolution authorizing the sale of surplus equipment or items to be placed on the Hamilton County surplus internet auction site. These items come from Anderson Center, unused furniture, lighting from the theater. There's a list in the resolution, and other audiovisual equipment that is no longer used here for your consideration.
No, sorry. I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the sale of surplus equipment by use of Hamilton County's surplus internet auction pursuant to Section 505.10 of the revised code, providing for sale of personal property via internet auction.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item I have for you is a motion for consideration to renew the landscape maintenance for 2025. We are again recommending the contract be renewed to Merkle Lawn Care in the amount of $295,502 with a 10% contingency.
I move to authorize bid preparation and advertisement for the Kellogg Avenue landscape maintenance.
Wrong one.
Hold on.
Oh.
That's what I mean.
Wait a minute,
I
that's
was
not,
looking in the wrong
I
place.
am looking too.
The
think we have-
2025 landscape maintenance.
It's under
But it
B.
doesn't say the
Under B,
landscape-
there are two different resolutions.
Oops, oh, so separately.
Yes. This-
Okay. Wait a minute, I just lost it.
Move to authorize the
I
bid.
move to authorize this board, this board hereby approve renewal of mowing contract LS1 and landscape maintenance contract LS2 to Merkle Lawn Care Company in the amount of $295,502, together with a 10% contingency for a maximum appropriation of $325,052. Further, this board hereby authorizes and directs the township administrator, after consultation with the law director, to enter into a contract with Merkle Lawn Care, Inc. for the 2025 mowing contract LS1 and landscape maintenance contract LS2.
Second,
Mrs. Lawson?
yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, wait.
So there, isn't there still another
Yeah,
resolution?
there's
Yes,
another one.
yes,
Now
and-
go
That's what I
back
thought.
up.
Okay, so I'll
It's
do this
above
one.
that one.
I move to authorize bid preparation and advertisement for the Kellogg Avenue landscape maintenance.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes,
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, you can't combine them, Mark.
Sorry, that was not Mark, that was your township administrator who missed one.
Too confusing for us.
Yes, that was
Can't do
me.
it that way. Okay, moving on. Steve.
We'll not merge the committee
Thank
motion
you.
next month. We'll leave those separate as well when we go through the 7 committees.
It's like a lighting district.
Yes, exactly, like the lighting district. So I have a couple items for your consideration this evening. The first relates to the Clough and Newtown Improvement Project. This is an application the township submitted back in 2022. Was funded by the Ohio Department of Transportation for additional turn lanes on Newtown Road, sidewalk project from Newtown Road connecting to the Turpin Hill subdivision. We've almost completed the engineering portion of this process. We're now moving into right-of-way phase. Before you is a proposal. Under the federal guidelines, we need to hire an outside consultant to conduct appraisals and negotiations. You have a proposal before you from Dennis A. Zaccardi and Associates. They've been working with us on a number of projects for a number of years and have done a phenomenal job. Staff's recommendation is to consider the motion that's suggested with that.
I move to authorize the township administrator to enter into a contract with Dennis A. Zaccardi and Associates for right-of-way services in connection with the partially grant-funded Clough and Newtown project, utilizing 94 TIF funds in the amount not to exceed $49,884.
Second,
Mrs. Lawson?
yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. The second I have is related, unfortunately, to a long completed grant-funded project. This is the Beach Mountain 5-mile continuous flow intersection. There were costs incurred during that project, which, if you're counting, opened 7.5 years ago. For a number of reasons, those have not been addressed. legal issues, et cetera, between Ohio Department of Transportation and the contractor. We've been working with them over the last 6 or 7 months to resolve a number of these, and these are all costs that were indeed incurred. They were change orders as part of the project. So we have a motion before you that entails basically the commitment of 2 funding amounts from TIF funds. One is for the Anderson Township portion for some additions that were done to that, some enhancements, namely median improvements and things like that with the project. The second is part of our share, which is split evenly with the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, which dealt with a number of other factors. It's important to keep in mind, these are large amounts, we realize that, but the project was also a large project, and we dealt with over $4 million, including nearly $3 million in grant funding. So these costs were incurred. I guess the benefit is we've been using the intersection. It's been working safely and soundly for 7.5 years. So we do appreciate your consideration of this so that we can begin to resolve all this with the state and with the county.
I move to authorize payments up to $86,288.63 to the Ohio Department of Transportation and $160,097 to the Hamilton County Engineer's Office to satisfy remaining invoices associated with the Beechmont and 5 Mile Continuous Flow Intersection Project, utilizing 1994 TIF funds in the 2024 or 2025 budget.
Second. Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you, and we've kind of reached an agreement on making sure we're all on the same page moving forward so this doesn't happen again. And these are not to exceed figures. We're still working to whittle that down, but we'd like to bring resolution to this.
So it
Yes.
wasn't like we weren't paying our bills?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the project went to litigation, then COVID happened, then the state got way behind in closing out projects, which typically
Okay.
happens a couple of years after anyway. But it's important to, in some of these change orders, we'll need to keep purchase orders open in the future for a couple of years in case of that. So it's just something we'll have to work through with the auditor.
Okay.
But the real question is, how is the intersection performing?
We believe it's performing just as it was after we studied it 6 months when it was done, which was significant reduction in crashes and a greatly improved traffic flow.
Great.
No reason to think otherwise. The delays that we experienced prior to that 10 years ago were significant. Given the fact we've had a significant amount of development as well in the center of the township, we've had more growth and I think smoother traffic, certainly safer traffic.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Third item I have is annual appointment. We'd like to keep Nancy Kane around for another year. She's done a phenomenal job for almost 2 decades with us, and frankly, without her services, I don't know where we would be since we do not have a public relations person, nor a communications person or anything like that. So there is a motion before you to authorize the extension of Nancy's contract. And again, important note on there is that we've never come close to that maximum dollar amount and don't anticipate we will in 25, but you never know. So.
Move to authorize the extension and continuing consultant role of Nancy Kane as communications consultant at the rate of $66 an hour for a total not to exceed $35,000 in 2025.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very grateful for Nancy.
Okay, I have just a few more items. The next is a motion that would appoint Mr. Girth as a representative to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments Board of Directors, and Ms. Stone as the alternate for 2025. This is a continuing commitment that this board has to planning, not only for Anderson Township, but planning throughout the region as far as transportation improvements, and this is continuing appointment for Mr. Girth. I would ask for authorization through this motion.
I move to appoint Josh Skirth as Anderson Township's representative to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments Board of Directors, and D. Stone as alternate for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is a resolution that would authorize a master services agreement with ROI Technologies. ROI is our outsourced IT. We do not have a dedicated IT person on staff. Mrs. Cowan, who is our office manager, oversees this contract and does a phenomenal job with that, but it helps to keep our costs down significantly. ROI has been with us for quite some time. They do an outstanding job, so I would ask for authorization to enter into this master services agreement.
I move to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the master services agreement with ROI Technologies LLC.
Second.
Mrs. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
The last item is an item arising from executive session discussions. We have an assistant events coordinator who has been outstanding. She is relocating at the end of this year. So we would ask that the board consider appointing Tina Kane. Tina has been a part-time events attendant for us for about 6 years, and again, does a great job, and we'd like to move her into the full-time role to replace Maddie Kelly.
I move to appoint Tina Kane as an Assistant Events Coordinator effective November 22nd, 2024, at a starting pay rate of $22 an hour and all other benefits normally offered with full-time employment.
Second. Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth? Yes. Mrs. Stone?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all we have this evening.
And I
Thank you.
just wanted to make a note, it's a good thing we did appoint Josh as the representative to the OKI Council of Governments, because he is going to be president of that board next year, so
You're done.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good. Glad you're in charge. Okay, next regular board meeting, December 19th, 5 p.m. 5 p.m. will be executive session, and then the board meeting will start out here at 5:30. So I move to adjourn.
Second.
Mrs. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Girth?
Yes.
Mrs. Stone?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.